Welcome to the Bad Boss Journal, the dope podcast where you can anonymously say exactly what you think about your bad boss, toxic work environment, and find out how to handle it.
Welcome to another episode of Bad Boss Journal. My name is Michelle.
And I'm Ava.
And for this week's episode, we thought it would be fun to kind of change things up a bit, because while I love having guests on, I do think it would be nice for us to talk about things related to just work in general, because that's kind of, what our podcast is about. And I was thinking, what about talking about work-life balance? Whether that's the lack thereof,
Which I
or
identify with.
yeah. So because I think sometimes, like, I know for me personally, as a person who has worked for herself for a while, I was actually a bad boss to myself. you know yeah. Sometimes you are your own bad boss, and I'm not afraid to admit that.
I agree completely.
Yeah. So do you have any sort of work life balance, Ava?
I don't. I am a perpetual bad boss to myself.
Mm,
So I'm one of those crazy people who will, and I'm not self-employed. I will show up early to work and I will leave late and put a lot of pressure on myself to overachieve.
mm,
And then forget to eat during the day or have one large meal in the evening, not exercise,
mm-hmm.
and not make that a priority in my life or
Right.
even neglect friends. So yeah, I'm not very good at the work life balance thing.
Where do you think all of that stems from? Like having to, overachieve and having to show up, you know, to work harder.
I think not that, and I'm necessarily goal oriented. I feel like I want to see the end. So if I start a
Mm,
project, I want to finish it and see that end result. And sometimes thinking about that, I'll put in the extra time, not necessarily realizing that it might be a marathon.
mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that it's also, as a minority, it's a cultural thing,
Mm,
also
yep.
to work that hard because you're told and you're raised that working hard gets rewarded,
Yeah.
um, where often those who are most successful are those who are not working that hard, they're working
Right.
smarter.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I feel like I'm the same way in terms of feeling the need to overachieve to be better than everyone else. And what's funny is I always say work smarter, not harder. And yet to myself, I have to constantly stop myself to be like, okay, wait, is this smarter or is this harder?
Yeah.
So I would say, in terms of my work life balance, I have learned a lot from my mistakes, because I was at a point in my life about 3 years ago where I worked myself to the point of physical exhaustion. I got so sick, I couldn't get out of bed.
Wow.
And then I ballooned like 80 pounds in 1 year.
Wow.
And they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And then for years, I was misdiagnosed, right? And yeah, I was just feeling absolutely miserable. My adrenal glands were like, it was a whole steaming pile of mess.
Mhm.
And I had just worked myself to the ground. After that happened, I started to really focus on what it is to be good in time management, right? How to optimize things. And then, my husband, he got sick with like this brain thing, and then that was like a wake up call. I think that was like the biggest one, because sometimes even if you do something like that, like you run yourself to the ground, especially if you don't have like self-esteem or self-worth in any like, a significant amount of
Yeah.
self-worth, you're just like, whatever, I deserved it, move on, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, when my husband got sick, I was just like, oh, this, I need to really figure out what I'm doing with my life, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's when I really honed in on trying to like be my own accountability, I guess, like partner. Yeah, so I definitely still have a hard time stopping work. So like when I'm going, and I have a very hard time stopping, but I'm learning to, chunk up my day. I'm trying to like streamline everything so that I'm not working as much, so that I'm just run, 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 and then just stop. And
Yeah.
doing that. This is like the first time in years that I've scheduled myself a massage and like a hydrotherapy thing.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I want to sign up.
I know, right? And the reason why I did that was because I actually got this other job over the weekend. Like I literally started just 3 days ago, and it's like another job on top of multiple jobs that I have. And like I have like a business I run and all this, and it's like, holy moly! And I was like, okay, this is the time for self care. Like I really need to implement the things that I tell, my friends and the people who come to me for business advice and all this other stuff. So yeah, I'm like forcing myself to stop, take moments. My husband had a really good idea. Like, so I chunk up my day. And because I have so many like things I have to do, I will have like a 1 hour morning ritual is what I call it. But I'll just, I take 1 hour to just slowly ease into my day, and that could mean like, I'm kind of woo woo, so it's like I read my own tarot in the morning.
No, that's
you know
great. I do that from my desk, so that's probably why I don't have work-life balance, is because I actually look at my horoscope and stuff from the workplace.
Hey, if I wasn't working from home, I would most likely be carrying my cards around with me, just pulling them out willy nilly anywhere,
Yeah.
So yeah, I just like spend an hour mentally preparing for the day and doing whatever I need to do to like really get up and ready to go. And then from there, I just start running. But like I have like these hour chunks that I divide, and then I spend a good portion, like I cut up my day because now I'm working all virtual. I have a gym that I go to, and they have a really nice work lounge. So now I'm going there, from like 12 to 3 or something like that. And I work out for a bit, and my husband was like, "No, this is personal work time. So basically, you go do your personal stuff, and then you work on your personal projects, like our business and whatever." And so I was like, "Cool," that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's been helping a lot. I'm hoping that this will allow me to maintain my jobs until I figure out which ones to let go. I think that's another thing, right? Like learning to let go and say no.
Yeah, but it's funny you mentioned that. A friend of mine about 2 years ago gave me this women's devotional book, and it's all about
Mm.
the women learning to say no, that they don't have to say yes to
Oh my
everything.
gosh, yeah.
Um, and so
That's my
it goes,
problem. I can't say no. I feel bad. I feel like I'm letting somebody down. They don't care. They
yeah,
don't care.
and that's what the devotional is about. It's basically like doing a lot of things that you're doing, like devoting times, like, hey, if I said no to this, that's 3 hours I could be spending towards this
Mm.
dream that I have that I've never had the opportunity to accomplish.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, at this point, I was playing yes man to everything in my life because I've been trying to work really hard into manifesting this like ultimate goal, which was, for me personally, after being in working all sorts of different things and realizing, like honing in on what I want, right? I realized I really want to be like a digital nomad. Like that sounds amazing to me, not being tied down to like one specific place or one specific group or whatever the case may be. And I think mostly it's just because I used to have to commute over an hour a day. So that's where it came from.
Yeah. But that's appealing to everybody right now, like especially, through the pandemic. I mean, I've always thought that too. I'm like, oh, how can I find a job where I travel and I can
Mhm.
work while I'm traveling and that's all I have to do.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I think it's interesting because I feel like our generation is really waking up to that, because we were taught originally, because I'm kind of like in between the Gen X and the millennial.
Yeah.
Like I'm like right in between. So I grew up on both straddling both sides.
Yeah.
And so I still grew up with like the entrepreneurship and like mentality and like working hard mentality, all that other stuff, but also, the digital era and like learning to put myself first in some aspects, but learning that later in life.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just I don't want to work for a place forever where I have to commute all the time and being able to travel the world. And I think, especially when my husband got sick, that was like our huge wake up call where I'm like, okay, I need to put it into gear. I keep saying I can't do this, I can't do that because of this or that or the other thing. And then I realized, like, you know what? I can do it. Like, I can, you know?
Yeah.
It's just a matter of figuring it out and,
Aw.
manifesting that dream. So I'm sure I'll start to let go of things. I think that's the biggest thing I have to learn this year is learning how to say no to things
Yeah.
or letting go of things because I have this one job that I've had for 6 years and I'm like, man, I think the only reason why, honestly, that I do it is because my boss, it's like the first time I've had a boss who recognized me
Mhm. Yeah.
in the sense like she recognized that I was a good worker, that like all the things I wanted,
Yes.
because I feel this need to be praised all the time,
Yeah, well,
you
and I
know?
think I think it goes with our generation, right? Like, and I think that's also the hard work. Like we want to get that feedback that no, we recognize that you put a lot of work
Right,
or effort into this, and that you put something together that was quality or that was successful,
right.
and you want to keep those feelings. So
Yeah,
it's natural that you want to stay with somebody who actually recognizes you for those
yeah,
things.
for sure, for sure. And in the past, I just had that job because it was easy and it was a no-brainer. But now I'm like so much more committed than I was for the past like 5 years because I finally have somebody who trusts me, who
Yeah,
you know asks for my advice, even though like I'm nowhere near that level, or yeah, so it's just really nice being able, being acknowledged for the work that I bring to the table and like all the changes that I've made that have helped,
yeah.
and all these things. And so I know I need to leave that job soon if things don't change. Like, cause right now at this point, I'm asking for like benefits.
Hmm.
And isn't that interesting how in our country, like, this, I've never actually had a job that paid benefits in my entire life.
That's
Me
crazy.
personally. Yeah. Like I'm actually a college dropout, right? Like I went to college for a bit. I was like, this really is not for me. And then I like started a
Yeah,
business. And then I was like, no, but and then like I kind of went through like this quarter life crisis where I was like, oh no, like I can't actually get a good like the type of jobs I want because they all want like a minimum bachelor's. I should go back. And then tried it again, could not do it. Like I stuck around for almost it was
yeah.
torture for me. And I know like using that word is not, like
No,
whatever,
no, no.
I get it, but
You're not the first friend or that I've had that has said that.
yeah,
It's
it
like, I
was, oh
mean,
my
look
gosh,
at
it was like I'd
Zuckerberg,
rather give birth.
right?
I'd rather give birth again, you know? Um like for real. It was so rough. And I think it's and my I was talking to Tom, my husband, and he says it best. He's like, it's because you're the type where if you want to learn something, you look it up, you learn it. You don't want to sit there writing reports and like you don't have that type of, you know, patience. And I'm like, yeah, that's totally true. That is me.
Well, but I think that's part of you, how you said you straddle the generations. I think, the especially the entrepreneurship, a lot of the most successful entrepreneurs have not been able to, get a bachelor's degree or go through college. I mean, even if you look back at, some of the greatest inventors of our time, they
Hmm.
have not been the, you know, A grade students in structured education. But that doesn't mean that they're not smart and super intelligent and can, contribute to society. I think, if anything, it's proven that you don't have to, that intelligence comes in all shapes and sizes and forms.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because so I did read a book about this specific thing where this researcher did a whole bunch of studies and tried to figure out, like, entrepreneurs, like, the statistics of how many entrepreneurs end up like being college dropouts or not going at all, and all
Mhm.
these things, and like even birth order, like he was talking about birth order and all these things, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so validated.
Yeah.
Because like, there was a brief stint in my time where I took the ASVABs
Mhm.
test, and I got like a 97.
Yes.
But then like I almost flunked high school because I refused to go to class. Like I would.
But it's because you weren't stimulated. I had a friend like this, like in high school. Like if he actually did the classwork, he would always ace it, but he never
Same.
finished anything or turned anything in. So he was
Yeah.
always almost flunking out of school. And I'm like, you
He's my
know this
flames,
stuff.
my twin flame or whatever. That was me. Like if I would go in and take my tests, I would get A's, right?
Yeah.
But I refused to do projects.
Yep.
I wouldn't do homework, and I remember I was told I was lazy because of that ever since I was a kid. And then I remember I don't know if I read it or saw it somewhere, but some person was talking about how when we procrastinate, we think we're being lazy, but in actuality, it's like this fear of failure.
Yeah.
It's like there's a lot of these fears like subconsciously that come up, and that's why like I try to be very mindful of how I raise my own children now after like
Mhm.
really just like pulling apart my own life and seeing how certain things affected it, and not like, trying to blame other people or anything like that. It's just it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'm not trying to blame my parents or whatever. At least I can, take inventory of how I feel like things changed and affected me, and
Yeah.
hopefully try to make sure my children don't, they grow up with the growth mindset rather than a fixed one.
Yeah.
You know, I know that I had to go from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, and really work on myself to get out of that rut. And I'm still working on it, like
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah, it's interesting your comments because it made me think about the time management piece and how you're devoting that hour in the morning and the time to go to the gym. And I think your kids will see that. And I think we were talking about, well, how did we get the ideas of overworking ourselves?
Oh my
And
gosh, yes.
recently I've been thinking about, I'm like, I don't remember my parents like making time to exercise. I remember them waking up early, going to work, coming home tired,
Yeah.
eating dinner, and then being in bed by 10 o'clock.
Right.
um, and different generation because like exercise as a daily thing wasn't big in that
Yeah.
time frame. But
Mhm.
I was like, well, I never learned to emulate the positive self care things because they didn't do those things. And not because bad on them, they just didn't have the time or the energy
Right.
to do it. And so I think
Yeah.
for you, you're modeling, for the next generation
Mm.
what how they should take care of themselves and how to um that work isn't everything, that taking
Right.
time for yourself is important too.
Yeah. I remember I remember hearing this from somewhere, and I think it's actually a really famous thing. Like I think a lot of people know about this, but I'm just going to talk about it anyway. Like whenever you're creating your work-life balance or trying to create structure in your schedule throughout the day, they tell you, imagine having a glass jar, and in front of you are there's rocks, then there's pebbles, and then there's sand. Like in order
Mm.
to fill up that jar the most effectively, you wouldn't just start with the sand. You know what I mean? Like, and so what they,
Yeah.
well, you could put it in whichever way you want, but if the rocks symbolize the most important things to you, right? In my case, it would be my children and my husband, right? Because
Right.
ultimately, I'm doing all of this to, make our lives better, right? So
Right.
you think of the rocks as your family, or yeah, your family or loved ones, and then the pebbles would be like your hobbies, or
Hmm.
the small stones would be like your hobbies, and then the sand would be the work.
Hmm.
And so that's how I was taught from this one business coaching training that I took a while back, where because before then I was just work always went on the calendar first. And then
Yeah.
if I could squeeze in time with my kids, I did it. And I used to validate that because I was still being a stay-at-home mom. So basically, I would stay at home and then try to work all day long. And then as soon as my husband came home, it was like a baton
Yeah.
pass, and I would run out and I'd go work. And so I used to validate that. But now that my children are getting older,
Yeah.
and I've learned this, like now that when I schedule my day out, I put in the time that I want to spend with my family first, and then I put in, like the self-care routines that I have to do in order to maintain my well-being, and my mental and physical and emotional well-being. And then I fill the rest of those open slots I have available for work.
Yeah, no, I think that's listeners, that's super good advice and important. And I'm gonna try to start implementing that. And it reminds me of so two things you said that I've read that successful, like very successful entrepreneurs and business people do, and that's the
Hmm.
starting your day, the preparing for your day, like keeping that like blocked
Hmm.
off. And then also taking care of you and making those appointments that block time or your family time
Right.
inflexible. So basically they're like, if there's some appointment, if it can be moved, I'm not going to ever touch what I've already blocked for my family or for my fitness and
Right.
mental health.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think those things are very important. And I am really bad at that because
Hmm.
I'll be like, oh, I've got to get up early for work, so I'm not going to work out in the morning. I'll try to do it in the
Right. Right.
evening, and then by the time I get home in the evening, I'm too tired to do that. So
Oh, yeah. And what I've learned is, I read a lot of books on entrepreneurs and like being effective and all of these things. And yeah, most CEOs or people who like entrepreneurs and stuff have this like vigorous routine, right?
mhm.
I mean, they're unchanged in their routines, is what
Yes,
I'd like to say.
yeah,
So their morning routines, like you said, are very crucial. And a lot of them work out in the morning. I cannot work out in the morning. I've tried it. I forced myself. I mean, I can wake up at 5 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, but if I work out in the morning, I'm dead tired by the afternoon.
yeah,
And so I think that ultimately it's about finding what would work for your
yes,
body, for your life. But once you figure it out, you have to be unwilling to change those things in order to take
absolutely,
care of
yeah,
yourself, you know?
yeah, no, that's super important. I am terrible at being inflexible with my schedule. And I know I need to do it. And it probably would radically change my life. Oh, that's what it also made me think about. One of the things that I know some of the successful CEOs do is simplify their lives. So like whatever they can automate in their lives, or it's like Steve Jobs and the black turtleneck and the same,
Mhm.
like simplify your wardrobe so that's one less thing you have to think about or spend extra energy on, so that you can spend that time on something that you really value.
Yep, I do that. I have 3 outfits that I rotate. I don't go clothing shopping. I'm just like, I don't need that in my life right now, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I wear shoes that specifically don't need to have socks because seriously, I know that sounds so stupid, but it's like the amount of time that I waste buying socks, losing socks, washing socks, you know? And then I do this thing where I have a list of things I have to get done, but there's a top three
Mm,
of each category that I have to get done. And so there's a list, but I always put the most important, most urgent ones at the top. And you know, basically will focus on getting those three done.
yeah.
And then anything else that I get done is like extra kudos, right?
Yeah.
And then what I do is before the day is over or before my work time is over, I will write down the next three things I need to get done the next day so that I don't have to sit there thinking. Because again, that's wasted time for me.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was talking to somebody last week and they were almost saying it like it was funny because they were like, oh, some people enjoy working or keeping busy. And I was like, oh, no, stop right there. I hate busyness. The whole, this whole thing where people are trying to one up each other about how busy they are and how tired they are and how drama, everything.
Yeah.
And I try very hard to, like, I don't ever call myself busy. I
Mhm.
haven't for the past, let's see, 5 years.
And
I'll
listeners, I
s-
just want to tell you, this is crazy that she doesn't call herself busy because she has like 10 jobs.
well, no, there's
But
six part-time jobs.
to a normal person, she has like 10 jobs.
Yeah, so I think for the rest of the season, my goal is to learn to let certain things go and realize that, people aren't going to be as disappointed. And I guess maybe some people will, but like ultimately, they're not going to be as distraught as I am.
Yeah.
As I think, hopefully. But then, also I think for you, you focus on like the self-care portion, right? Like making sure, and I know for me too, it took forever and I still have to keep myself accountable. And I was mentioning earlier, I have about 500 alarm settings on my phone. I know that sounds like it's ridiculous. Tom once made fun of me for that, but now he sees why I do it. So I have one for like every 3 minutes because over the years of having my phone, I would keep making them like every 3 minute apart. And what I do is, let's say if at noon I have to start getting ready to go to the gym,
Hmm.
then at 11:45 I have an alarm, and then at 11:55, so the 45 is a 15-minute warning, and then I have another one in 10 minutes. So it's like, okay, okay, I got it. And then I have to get up, things like that. And so I think sometimes you have to be creative. You have to, and I think it's great when we do this type of work because it's not just about becoming productive, but we're starting to really hone in into who we are, how we work,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah, no, I think so. It's interesting because as I'm getting older, like you mentioned before, procrastination. So as I'm getting older, which is a problem I didn't have when I was younger, is that started to procrastinate more. But I think it's because over the years I've developed a stronger fear of failure, which is odd.
Mm,
And so now that's sort of like a little bit of a paralyzing thing. And I'm like, you're not supposed
mm-hmm,
to as you get older, start procrastinating. But it's funny, the alarm thing, I do it only for getting up in the morning. So I'll have like 5 alarms to wake up to
mm-hmm.
go to work. Or like if I have to go to, for a flight or something, but had never thought about doing that for other appointments. And so that's really smart.
Oh yeah. I do it for waking up. I do it for I give myself a 5 minute warning before I have to like before the end of my morning ritual, right? So if my morning ritual is about to end, like it's from like let's say 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. Then at 5:55 I'll have an alarm, and then at 6 I'll have an alarm. So I only have those two. The 5:55. So I have a warning, and then
Mm,
oh, time to switch, and then I have that for when I have to go to the gym. I have it for when I have to eat
mm,
because I'll forget to eat like you,
yes.
especially when I'm running, like just trying to get things done. And just for everybody, I know like I basically have created ADHD life because I don't have ADHD, but my life looks like I have ADHD, or my
Um,
life looks like the definition of ADHD. But the goal for this is ultimately so I don't have to work. Like my goal is to retire early. I've learned
right.
about that whole like fire thing and all that. And so because of that, like I did not make enough income to be able to just stow away cash. So I had to do all these extra things, but now that I'm having more significant jobs, I'm like, "Oh, crap, like now I need to start cutting back on these other things that I don't really need." That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's always a learning progress.
Yeah.
It's always taking one day at a time. If like putting little systems in. I even have an alarm to get ready for bed.
That's a good one. Well, oh, so there was just a news article about this that apparently there's a magic going to bed number that's supposed to help reduce risk of heart attacks and strokes. And so it's between
What?
10 and 11, they said. And so that's important to have an alarm. And I think I've always heard, you should be consistent with your sleep because we always think we can like, oh, I'll sleep longer on the weekend, and actually
Right, right,
that
right.
throws us off our natural schedule.
But also I've heard that you can't actually make up sleep.
No, you can't.
Yeah. And what it's interesting that you said that about the 10 to 11 because so basically for 12 years I didn't get more than 3 hours of sleep at a time because I had 3 children back to back and I nursed all of them.
Oh wow.
for 2 years each. And and then like half of them like wouldn't leave my bed after
Uh,
after like for 3 years. So essentially for about 10 to 12 years I only got about 3 hours of sleep at a time. After that I became obsessed with sleep hygiene and and I started I tried different things and I was like I noticed that when went to sleep before 9:30 I would wake up at 12:30 a.m. and then I couldn't go to sleep till about 3 or 4. And then if I went to sleep too late I was too tired, and so my alarm goes off at 10 and I'm like okay, time to get into bed, and then I'll let myself watch one thing
mhm.
and then I turn it off and then I go to sleep. I should be reading a book, but like sometimes I'll read a book, but most of the time I'm trying to like catch up on Dexter
Yeah, no,
because
I
the new season's
understand.
out.
I understand. So I'm one of those bad people that actually sleeps with like the TV on and it doesn't bother me or whatever. Like I'll start a Netflix episode, series, and
Uh
you know,
huh.
last remember, episode 5, but I'm like on episode 10 when I wake up in the morning.
That's so funny you mentioned that. I used to make fun of my mom for doing that because my mom and dad both do that. And then I started doing that like 6 months ago because it's like
No.
white noise for me.
Yes,
But I
exactly.
always have something like Psych or Frasier, something I've already watched so I don't have to pay attention.
Oh yeah, I'll do like, the Golden Girls or like Murder
That
She
was one
Wrote.
of mine for a while, yeah. All right. So we have to wrap up our episode because we're running out of time. But I'm really digging these conversations we're having. And so I think we're gonna try to do a part two.
I think that's an excellent idea. And I think, if this has been a great, if you're going through a bad boss situation, finding work life balance is very essential to basically live through that experience. So
Hmm.
we will see you on part 2 of this work life balance saga.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone.
See you next time.
Do you have a bad boss experience you'd like to share with us? Visit our website, thebadbossjournal.com, to submit your story. You can also support our show by checking out our merch and more on our website. Thank you so much for listening to the Bad Boss Journal.